I'm Stephen from Cook Cartel, and you're listening to BBQ Base.
Welcome back to Barbecue Base, New Zealand's first barbecue podcast. I'm your host, the captain of Burnt Beginnings barbecue team, Alex Lawson, and I'm joined as always by the mafia of New Zealand barbecue Jesus himself, Noel Hassapolidakis. How are you today, Noel?
Very well, thanks, Alex. Really good to be back firing up this second episode, actually. Very excited. And just to let you guys know, if anyone wants to get in contact with us, just come through the new Barbecue Base site. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And thanks very much for the listens and the follows so far.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been awesome. And we're super pumped to be joined tonight by the Godfather of New Zealand barbecue, I think is how I keep seeing you being referred to, Mr. Luke Seeney. Welcome, Luke.
Cheers, guys. I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you along. And for those who don't know, Luke is, well, like we said, he's the godfather of New Zealand barbecue. He's been one of the key folk in the scene here, promoting away, making it everything he could do. One of the leaders behind the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance page, which used to be the New Zealand Pitmasters page. And also, and this is quite special for us, we're quite pleased to be able to have an excuse to do this. Luke is Mr. Jack Daniels for New Zealand. So we are all enjoying a little Jack Daniels tipple tonight. So I'm happily drinking I'll see if you can see this, the New Zealand Barbecue Pitmasters Single Barrel Select, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. So I'm enjoying one of those. Noel, what are you sipping on tonight, buddy?
I'm on the Single Barrel Rye, actually, which is absolutely stunning. A little bit less sweet, which I prefer personally. So yeah, loving that with a bit of Coke.
Yeah, that's you put in Coke in Single Barrel. You're a heathen and a philistine, friend. Heathen.
Honestly,
I live out west. Come on, give me a break.
And Luke, what was your chosen? You could choose from pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, I've got a good selection here, but I'm actually drinking Gentleman Jack tonight. That's my my go-to for a sipping whiskey this time of night.
That's a good choice. And while we've all got a glass in hand, I think it's only right that as a podcast, we raise our glasses in memory of one of the fallen brothers of barbecue. And between our first episode and this episode, many of you will know, but we were extremely gutted to lose Caleb Tayala to the dreaded cancer over this time, and a huge turnout for his funeral. It was a really emotional time. Both inside and out, because due to the COVID restrictions, there was difficulty having everybody in. But he will not be forgotten. He'll be long remembered, and he was a denizen of the New Zealand barbecue scene. So we'll just raise our glasses and cheers to Caleb, wherever you are at the moment, my friend.
Cheers to Caleb, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Absolutely. So, as Noel mentioned, we've got some new channels, some new places to find us, which is super exciting. We are live on Spotify. We are live on Anchor, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, a number of apps. We're just waiting for Apple. Apple is so slow to get us up there, but it is in process. So hopefully by the time this comes out or a few days later, you'll be able to find us on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube. Hopefully, if I've done everything right tonight, you should be able to see pretty dirty mugs on YouTube and enjoy us face to face, if that's the way you want to consume us. And obviously, the Facebook page is live, so please come and see us at Barbecue Base on Facebook. Give us a follow, have a little listen, and keep up with us there. So, guys, it's been an interesting time for any of our international listeners, and there is one. I did see we did have one listener from Australia, which is cool. We've been in some pretty big been in some pretty big lockdown periods over the last 4 weeks, so we haven't really been allowed to do much at all. All our competitions are obviously off the scene, but that hasn't stopped people getting out cooking, has it? So what's been on the pits, fellas?
Well, this week, I've been trying it. Well, in fact, for the last sort of week and a half, I've been trying out the pit barrel. So I've actually managed to cook every single protein on that in a week and a half. So chicken, lamb, pork, briskets, really put it through its paces because, my familiarity is with the Broncos. So it's really nice to sort of stand those side by side and actually understand a bit more about how they perform. So I've cooked up a storm this week, pretty much everything.
It is a wonderful bit of kit, and we'll talk about it a little bit
Absolutely.
later in some of our session on equipment. But it is a great pit, and I have seen some of the stuff that you've had coming out of that, and it is quite stunning. And if you want to see that, you can see it at Meat Mafia Collective on Facebook. So get along there and have a look at some of the stuff coming out of Noel's barrel. Luke, what have you been firing up, my friend?
Listen, boys, I wish I was cooking more, but I've been at home working from home, and we've had the 2 young kids with us, so it's been a bit difficult doing any long cooks. I managed to cook a lamb shoulder the other day, and I tried out doing that on the Weber GA, just to crank up the small one because I could park it outside the door where I'm working, and played around with that, which was awesome. That turned out really good actually. Was really pleased with that. Doing a few little. Playing around with some chicken. I did some deboned and stuffed chicken wings that I grilled. That was just the classic kind of stuffing, and that worked out awesome. Stoked with those.
Sorry, mate. I have to say I saw those and they were amazing. Definitely inspired me to have a crack at them. It's one thing I haven't done with chicken actually.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's a lot of work for the time it takes to eat them at the end, deboning them. But it was a good challenge, and it got my knife skills back out again, which was really good. And then
isn't that barbecue all over though? Like you cook it for 10 hours and you eat it in like 3 minutes.
Oh mate, I've got a habit of buying knives, and I've got a knife collection I don't bring out often enough. So it was good to be able to crack it open and play around with them again, which was awesome. And then most of the cooking's been hot and fast, so lots of steak, lots of aged steak. I'm really into my aged steaks. I love playing around with different aged. I've got a drying cabinet out in the shed, so being able to age things 45 days to 135 days as full racks has been awesome. So playing around with different ages of steak has been a key thing.
I think anybody watching on the YouTube will be looking at the background there, Luke, and thinking you've got what looks like a pretty amazing shed back there. It looks like some good staples and some things, some toys in there that everybody would like to get their hands on.
One of the benefits of working in the industry for as long as I have, you tend to collect a few bottles here and there along the way.
So one of the other things that I thought was really interesting, and it's been something I've seen both here, and I know we've all been involved in it, but we've seen it overseas as well, and it's been with the the inability for us to have in-person competitions, the rise of the internet competition. And not only have I seen there's been a few kind of groups of friends having informal competitions amongst themselves, but one of the highlights for me actually of the lockdown was the Great COVID-19 Cook-Off that was run by Derek Paul, who is one of the promoters of competition, and one of the competitions that couldn't actually happen because of COVID. But I thought that was a fantastic thing for anybody who didn't see it. So I actually managed to compete in 3 of them, well 2, but then I helped my daughter with the burger round. She did the burger round. And I know Noel and Luke have been involved in the judging and some of the running of it. But the basic premise was we did a protein every week. You had a cook window that opened as usual. The protein and the rules were set, and so we started with chicken, which I did cook chicken, but mine were crap, so we just ate them, and I didn't bother sending them in because I didn't want a really low score. I knew they were rubbish. And then we did burgers, which was heaps of fun, and some of the creativity was amazing. Followed by ribs, which was a bit more traditional in the competition scene, and then finally with beef, the granddaddy. And the way that you did it, you had to send a couple of videos demonstrating the cook and showing the tenderness and what it looked like, a couple of photos. You had to put a special sign in so that they knew that you'd cooked it on that during that time frame. So the sign for each round was only released the day before. Brilliant fun. And, each week we were talking kind of 35 to 45 people from the New Zealand barbecue scene, people who never cooked comps, hardcore comp guys, everybody just getting stuck in. And some of the quality was really outstanding, and it was so much fun to be a part of. But guys, what was it like from in the judging room, or the judging rooms, because you were all in your houses receiving these videos and and
Yeah, I
pictures.
mean, from my side of things, it was something completely different to what we're used to, because when we're normally involved in the judging process, or we training judges to judge, the appearance is it's a smaller part of the whole process. Generally you go, okay, appearance is out of 10 points, it's single weighted. Texture and taste becomes the main priority when you're judging a normal competition. So to reverse that completely and be, well, okay, we can't taste it, we don't know what the texture is like, it's all about appearance, and it's all about the look and feel and how it's presented, made for a really different kind of judging process. So it took a little while to get your I think get your feet and get your baseline of what you think is really good barbecue in that aspect.
Were you guys involved in how, I guess establishing the criteria was, I mean, when Derek first mentioned it, I was like, how are you going to do this? Because literally, it could be just a beauty parade and people putting up, painted food and all that kind of thing, if you think, but there was some really good criteria. How did you guys come up with that?
Well, Carl was involved as well, wasn't he? So Carl was one of the head judges. So I guess there was a bit of a feedback session over Instant Messenger with the other judges, just to say, look, how are we going to get a feel for texture, bite through, all of those sorts of things. What do we want to see on video? So I came in late in the piece, so I only judged ribs and brisket. But Luke, how did they go about it with the other stuff?
Well, to be honest, man, I think Derek did a lot of that work. He did a lot of leg work. He pulled a lot of this together, not taking anything away from the other guys involved, but he had a vision of what he wanted to do at the start of this, and I think he kind of brought it to life. I think some of his terminology was awesome when it came to the burgers, where it's it's oozability, it's smashability, it's how much do I want to eat this, all these kind of things that were different from that whole taste and texture type of judging. So he did an awesome job of putting that together. That whole comp, it was really well done.
Yeah, the burger round, I helped my daughter who's 10, and we were thinking about it, and we were thinking, how do we get ooze? So we put cheese inside the patty, and we thought it oozed pretty well, and then we saw some of the ooze that came. I swear some of these guys must have used about a cow's worth of cheese on their burgers. Some of them were outrageous.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really, really awesome. I was hungry after that.
Yeah, it was definitely, well, we had burgers for dinner, unsurprisingly, that night. We finished them off. But I just thought that was a really great competition. And I thought it was so good to see a whole heap of new guys and girls and kids who weren't competition people taking out some of the comp guys, doing really well. And just great to see that scene growing and people's interest in it. And I think that's been a bit of a common thing over the last 4 or 5 weeks that I've noticed, is the amount of new people coming into barbecue at the moment. I mean, you must have seen that on the page, Luke.
Yeah, it's been huge. It's been, I've been sharing as many stats as I can with the community on a weekly basis, just to show them how much it's grown. From numbers of new people into the page. I think we've had 3,000 people over this lockdown period come and join the community.
Through numbers.
Oh, through to the interactions. I mean, we on a normal month we'd get 56,000 comments or interactions with the page, up to about 210. I think 210,000 we peaked at over the lockdown period. So people had time and people were getting into it. But the amazing thing for me is just that positivity that keeps coming out of the group. We have an admin team that monitors it, but we actually have a community that monitors it as well. They're the guys who are keeping it, the positive vibes. They know what they should be posting, what they shouldn't be posting, and things that shouldn't be getting posted are getting deleted quite quickly. So it's been a huge growth for us. But on the same thing, we're seeing the right kind of people come into the group.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been awesome to see the passion come through, hasn't it, Noel? I mean, they're just like, guys just want to learn, and girls want to come in and learn. And
yeah, I mean, look, hugely. I mean, I get quite a few, as you can imagine, direct messages, and there's been a lot of sort of new names that I don't recognise, going, oh, how do I do this? You seem to be the guys to talk to, so with commenting on the group and also dealing with the direct messages as well, it's kept me quite busy through the COVID lockdown period, to be honest, which has been awesome. So I've really enjoyed that.
And I guess that really sparked what we're thinking about talking about in tonight's show or today's show, whatever you're listening to this. We're recording it live and straight in your ears. That we've seen so many new people come in. We thought, hey, you know what? We know a lot of you guys know a fair bit about it, but there's a lot of people coming in, and you're seeing the questions on the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance page. What does the smoke rush to start with? What's the best cut to start with? So we thought, hey, let's do a little bit of a newbie inspired section and sort of give some people some of our thoughts and advice and You know, we've all sort of been there. We've all started. We've all made the mistakes, and if we can sort of tell you a few of our mistakes, and hopefully that avoids you having to make them, and you can go straight on and skip the shitty bits like that we had to put up with. Although there is a saying,
and there were a few.
well, there were quite a few, but yeah, there is a really good saying. You know, you don't know good barbecue until you've cooked bad barbecue, and I think we can all think of a few bad bits of barbecue that we've cooked over the time. But I thought it's a really interesting thing to start with. So, and I guess the first thing that most people do, they walk into a Mitre 10 or a Bunnings or somewhere, and they go, I'm going to buy one of these. And they buy whatever's in front of them, and they might spend anywhere between, you know, $100 and $3,000, depending on what shop you're in, you know, for a starter, and what your budget is. So, you know, Noel, what if you were starting out today, but knowing everything you know, what would you be buying?
Well, look, I started doing. I've always cooked on charcoal, but I started doing American barbecue about 4-ish years ago, and I guess what I didn't factor when I was buying the original pits that I went through was my lifestyle, right? So I had a young family. I had 2 kids that did a lot of sport. I've got a boy that's reps cricket, reps football. I've got a girl that sort of, you know, was an elite gymnast at the time, you know, and had a lot of sort of running around Auckland to do. So really looking at the type of pit and how that will fit in with your lifestyle. So for example, you know, offset smokers, feeding it sticks every 20 minutes, you're not going to be able to go off to a football game, watch your son or daughter play for 3 hours and come back and hope that that temperature is still holding. It just does not work with that kind of lifestyle, you know. So looking at things like barrel smokers like the Bronco, the Pit Barrel, Weber's are reasonably reliable, but then pellet smokers as well. I mean, I know there's a lot of hate for those in the group, you know, unjustly, I think, because the trends in America are towards, you know, pellet smokers and drum smokers, you know. So if that is what fits with your lifestyle and that is what you need to get, you know, to enjoy.
Oh, we might have lost Noel. He'll come back.
Don't they know who he is?
Even Jesus doesn't get extremely great Wi-Fi out in
out west. Internet gods are not shining
out in Waitakere, but he will come back. The part of the platform we're using is very good, and it keeps all that. But I think it is a very interesting thing, because, you know, you look in the page, Luke, and there's you know, there is a little bit of almost like the Apple fanboys when anybody suggests anything apart from a Weber kettle, and they are fantastic, and I have one, but it wasn't the first pit I got.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the reality is, and you got to look at the page for what it is the fact that there's a big cross section of people in their barbecue journey on that page, you know, and you have a huge number of guys who are competitors, and they're sponsored, and they've got their preferences, and they've got their own brands that they push and they want. So you're always going to get these threads in these conversations where people are saying, you should go for this, you should go for this, you should go for this. And they're biased discussions. And the biggest thing I say is that if you're a consumer and you want to go out there and buy something, do some research. Don't just rely on the page to get that research. Go and look online, look at reviews, look at independent reviews of people, not just in New Zealand, but across other markets. And that should give you a good idea of what you want. But I think Noel made a really good point, which is you got to look at what's your lifestyle and what you want to do. Because the biggest thing I've learned is that, hey, listen, I'm really into barbecue, and I love it, and I try and do as much as I can. And I've got a big cross section of barbecues, but there are certain ones that I always lean to, because those ones in particular, is that I head towards, because they suit the time I have at that particular time, you know. So I've got young kids at the moment, so long, low and slow feeding a barbecue heaps of sticks over a 12-hour period isn't going to work for me. But something where I can load up a chimney, get it cranking, put it into a pit, into a cooker, and have it going within sort of half an hour, 45 minutes, and cook a couple of steaks, that works for me. So you really got to find out what it is that works for your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, the first pit that I got was a pit barrel, and I got it for the exact reasons that I did a lot of research online and watched some videos. And actually, one of the videos by Ballistic Barbecue, which is a great barbecue channel on YouTube, he did a review of it, and he said if you're starting out and you want a pit that you literally cannot stuff up, pit barrel's for you. And I was like, well, that sounds like me, something that I just can't stuff up. brilliant because you don't adjust the temperature. You just get it going and hang the meat or lay the meat on the grill and off it goes. And it does its thing and it sits there for ages. So at that point of time, it was great. And then I progressed up from there. And now I actually got then offset and ran that for a while. Got a Weber kettle, which is a fantastic piece of kit because it's so versatile and it is great piece of kit. And we're not going to say it's not. Especially for the price point, about $400, and you've got the premium model. You can grill steaks, you can do a brisket, you can use it in all sorts of ways. But I actually sold my offset this year because I was just like, every time I wanted to use it or used it, I would have to sit by it for so long, and then I'd be missing the party that was around the back of my house.
Yeah,
where all my mates were.
The other thing also is that you might really like barbecue, and then you go and get this fang-dangled barbecue, and you cook your first brisket, you take it in, and no one in the household likes smoked meat, so you're stuck with the barbecue that you're stuck with. But I think even the $89 ones and the $199 ones and those sort of things, they have their place for consumers, because I think, if you're not sure and you want to dip your toe in and you don't want to go and spend $500 on a Weber, and then if you not like it, sell it. You buy one of these smaller ones. They do the job for what you're probably looking at when you're starting out, because you're not going to go from not cooking anything to cooking a 9-kilo brisket and it turning out to be amazing in your first cook, unless you're probably Noel. But I mean,
you do cook a 9-kilo brisket. You do cook a 9-kilo brisket for your first cook, and you think it's going to be easy, and then you realise you just basically served some shoe leather, like I did.
Yeah. I think we've all done that. We've all done that. I think it's one of those things where that's learning. You're not going to get it right every time.
Look, I mean, what I normally say to people about pits is to really look for a good secondhand Weber when you're starting out. Because a lot of people underestimate the time and patience it takes to do American barbecue, right? And it's a style of cooking that you need to experience firsthand to know whether or not you're going to get excited and passionate about it, and if you want to stand by a pit for 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it might be. So start small. If you get really excited about it like I did, then start to invest in a bigger pit. Otherwise you can spend $3,000 on a Kamado. A lot of people go out and buy massive Kamados for their first pits, and they end up being nice little ceramic ornaments on the deck and not really touched, So I'm not a big fan of that. I think people should start small, get excited about it, and then invest in something that, will fit with their lifestyle.
I mean, the other way to do it, I guess, is find somebody who's got one of those pits and go and spend a bit of time with them. And if it's a mate, then great. Or, there's plenty of people on the page who will happily have you come around and cook some stuff with them. It's a bit like, the best boat to own is your mate's boat.
Yeah.
Because you don't all the fun and none of the risk, right? So, if you're going, hey, I want one of those big traditional Texas offsets, and I want 48 square inches of space, and I want all the 3 levels, go and find somebody who's got one and see what it actually takes, because you underestimate a lot of stuff, the fuel that it takes. The wood costs money. It's not cheap to run an offset, I found. And then the other adage around, I think it's really good advice to go set your budget and get the best thing you can within that budget. Because the more quality you get, the easier you'll find to get temp. Don't go out and spend $2,000 if your budget's $300. Go and spend $300, but spend it wisely and find the best quality pit that you can.
100%. 100%.
Totally agree. 100% agree.
Yeah. What about so you've bought your pit, and whether it's a drum, whether it's a bullet, whether it's a kettle, whatever it is, whatever you've decided, and then the next really kind of daunting moment is walking into the butcher's for the first time and going, what am I meant to buy? And the fear factor of buying the wrong thing. I remember being petrified of, have I bought a pork shoulder or a pork butt, and going, and then now I go, well, it doesn't really matter. No. It's still going to make great pulled pork. But at the time, you're convinced I must buy this pork butt, and it has to be a Boston butt. And does my butcher know what he's doing, and all that kind of stuff. So what's a great, if you just bought it, you want to cook something. What are we cooking on it?
Personally, my first cook was a brisket and beef cheeks, which was pretty much a disaster, really. So now if someone comes to me and says, all right, what am I going to do for my first cook? It's usually a pork butt. The reason was a pork butt or pork shoulder. So pork shoulder is equally as good, but you want to get the butcher to take the skin off it. So you don't get crackle when you do low and slow, obviously. So get the skin off, tidy it up a little bit, but there's a lot of fat and collagen in pork shoulder. So it takes an absolute beating. So when you haven't got full control of your pit, in terms of temp control, it's a really good one because it takes temperature fluctuations. It really can take a beating. So chances are you will pull that cook off reasonably easily, and that will sort of build some confidence for the next sort of 2 or 3 proteins. But yeah, pork butt is probably number 1 for me. Or if you want to go hot and fast, a chicken, humble chicken.
Yeah, chicken would be my go-to, my suggestion, purely from a get to know your pit type perspective. Where working out your vents and working out your heat and how you bring up your heat or lower your heat in whatever cooker you're using is probably chicken, and it's a bit of a shorter cook, and then pork ribs. I think there's a lot of content on pork ribs. So
well, the great thing about the chicken is it just picks up so much flavor, the chicken, in a short amount of time. It's quite a bland meat, so it just sucks in that really lovely charcoal or smoke flavor without, as long as you're running a good clean fire, it doesn't become overpowering, but it just picks up all that flavor right off. And there are some great rubs and super easy. I mean, just bung the whole thing on the grate, right? Or stick a beer can up its ass and stand it up for a bit, or it's just so easy.
Before I forget, before you launch into your first protein, you've got your new barbecue. When I got the pit barrel, I hadn't used one before. I'd watched someone cook on it, but I'd never used one. So I actually ran it with no proteins in it at all. So I just ran it, tweaked the vents, pulled the bars out just to see what effect that had on the temperature. So I spend a good few hours just playing around with everything there is on the barbecue just to see how certain movements will affect temperature, and that sort of stuff. So before I even put meat on, I'm sort of trying to get control of the temperature as best I can without any meat in it.
Well, that's a good point as well. Getting to know the pit itself, and there's a very easy test you can do in the States. They call it the biscuit test, but over here, we call it the scone test or whatever, which is just getting some scone mix and putting them in various places on the grill, and then just letting it go and seeing which burns first. So there, where a hot spot is, which bit are going a bit slower. Because every pit's different, and every pit, it could be the same model as your mate's one. You might have 2 Oklahoma Joe Highlanders, and one's going to have a hot spot in a little bit of a different place to the other one, and one might run a bit hotter than the other, and you're just not going to know that until you've sat back and used it. So that's something I've done as well. I just literally let pit run when I buy it and go chuck some probes in it and just watch and see what happens and play with the dampers and just experiment a bit.
Yeah, totally agree.
The other great thing about that pork butt or pork shoulder is it's really hard to stuff that up, right?
Very hard. Very hard.
It can go way over and still be awesome. You'll still be the king of the barbecue that day, even if technically it's gone way over, because they are very forgiving pieces of meat. But I think also just like chat to the butchers as well is a really good thing. Like see what they've got and how much they know about it, and just ask for stuff. If there's something in particular you want, I've always found you just ask. They're pretty good out there at the moment.
That's that's the key thing. I mean, a lot of people are scared to talk to the guys behind the counter when it comes to a butcher. They just go and grab the packages in the fridge. But I think that's why a lot of us now go to the butchers, is because you've got a connection with the guy behind the counter, and you can actually ask him what his advice is, or for specific cuts that may not be in the cabinet that you want to try out or play around with. And having access to someone like that is key.
So it kind of leads us on, doesn't it, Noel, to your meat of the week or meat of the fortnight, and your Noel's meat. What are we talking about this week?
Mate, I thought for the newbies, I think a lot of people sort of see ribs as one of the sort of traditional things that you can cook in American barbecue, and as Luke said earlier, it's a reasonably straightforward piece of meat to find information online in terms of methods and flavor profiles and things like that. So I thought I'd have a bit of a chat about pork ribs today. There's many different schools of thought around temperatures to cook at, depending on which sort of countries' forums you're looking at. But I've cooked a lot of ribs now, and I've found that 275 seems to be the optimum for all pork for me. Just running it a little bit hotter, it seems to like that. The fat seems to render a bit better. Your bark seems to form a bit better because obviously it's a much shorter cook than a brisket or a pork butt. So 275 Fahrenheit is the sort of temperature for me.
Now, when you're in the butcher's looking for your ribs, like that can be a bit of a lottery at the moment as well, can't it? So, what are you looking for when you're picking up a slab of ribs?
Yeah, so typically I'm cooking St. Louis cut Swift ribs. The other brand that's available is Wichita. So they're obviously both imported, both grain-fed products out of the US. So tend to have quite a bit of marbling and stay pretty moist through the cook. So again, they take a bit of a beating if you're inexperienced. They're likely to sort of pull through a cook that's a little bit haphazard. The other cuts that are available, obviously, you can get your spare ribs, which I guess are fondly known as shiners in the Pitmaster Forum, which there's really not a lot of meat on them. They're sort of meat between the bone, but not a lot else. And to be honest with you, for a cook like this, I'd probably avoid those. I probably
and they tend to be they're the New Zealand ribs, really, aren't they?
Yeah,
because
New Zealand,
value different bits of the pig and all that kind of
so
thing.
New Zealand, and there's a lot of Spanish imported spare ribs as well. So I'm not saying don't cook them, but they're a lot shorter cook. So if you're looking for a sort of meaty rib that stays moist and all of that, you're looking at really St. Louis cut and your baby back rib cuts generally.
And with a baby back, are we talking a little bit shorter on the cook time?
Yeah, absolutely.
The same?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're cut from a different part of the pig. So quite often you'll find that there's a bit of loin on the baby back, and that's the bit that sort of overcooks and goes quite hard. So typically I'm looking for that bit of loin and going, right, I'm going to remove as much of that as I can because I want the rib meat to stay moist. I don't want it to overcook. So typically I'm looking for that trim, and I will put something up about that actually, because a few people have asked me about baby backs and overcooking them and what have you. So I think it's probably about time that I did something with those. Yeah.
And what about so we get our ribs home and you get them out. I mean, what are the tips for prepping the ribs before they even see the barbecue?
Yeah. So look, for home cooks, really, you don't need to do too much to them apart from take the membrane off the back. So normally I just ease the back of a spoon under the membrane, grab a piece of kitchen roll, and if you're really lucky, it will rip off in one piece. Most of the time you're sort of picking at it for 10 minutes trying to get the straggly bits, but membrane off, and generally I'm cutting away any hard fat or anything that I look at and think I wouldn't really want to eat that when it's cooked, so I just give it a bit of a tidy up. And that's really it. I then put my rubs on usually about 30 minutes before they go onto the pit. So,
Do you use a binder?
Look, personally, I just use water. I've used, some Carolina mustard, the slap it on Carolina mustard from Roman Q, which is a good binder as well. But most of the time it's just water. You just need something for it to stay a bit moist and for the rub to stick to, really. So quick spritz of water, rub on.
I use the yellow mustard quite a bit, just to help it stick. But I've heard a lot of people swear blind by mayonnaise, and they say it adds an extra level of fat into the thing. Have you ever tried the old mayo on the ribs before rubs?
I haven't, but I did watch the Jess Pryles mayonnaise steak the other night. I don't know if you guys have seen that video, but look,
I haven't seen that, no.
Mate, the bottom line is it's like butter or anything else, like it's a layer of fat and it's going to caramelize and do good things to the meat. So I'm not put off by that method at all. I think why not give it a go? Certainly would try it.
Just maybe not as much as you put in your sandwich. You don't need that. You don't need an inch thick layer of it. Just a smear.
Absolutely.
So and the rub's only on for 30? You don't leave the rubs on for longer? I know, I like to put it on for 2 hours, but what's your theory in there?
Well, my theory there is that it's quite a thin piece of meat, and any rub that's got salt in it, you'll naturally start to cure the rib meat. And I'm not cooking bacon, I'm cooking ribs. So I just want that flavour to go into the very surface of the meat and then go straight into the pit. And then, flavour infused is enough. I've tried rubbing them and then vat packing them and leaving them overnight. But you end up with a much more sort of cured and bacony flavour, which I'm not all about really on the ribs.
And what about, so we're out towards the pit. I mean, obviously normally we've got a base of charcoal, but what sort of woods, if you're using wood or whether it's chunks or splits for an offset or even wood chips, what are the sort of woods that you're looking for a pork rib?
So look, pork and apple, right? So everyone has a roast pork and apple sauce goes with that. So to be honest with you, any fruit wood goes really well with pork. If you prefer an intense smoke flavor, you can mix a bit of manuka in with your fruit wood. So you've got a bit of sweet and a bit of hit. But generally I lean towards fruit wood for ribs. So I'm doing cherry, apple, plum, that sort of stuff.
And so we've got the ribs on the old on the grill or hanging, depending on
what you're cooking on. Yeah,
what you're cooking on. We hear a lot about 3-2-1 or 2-2-1 or 2-1.5, etc., etc. How long should people be thinking? Because our ribs that we get and the types of ribs and the types of temperatures we're cooking at. If somebody does a 3-2-1, it's likely to end in a little bit of disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look. 225 is the sort of, a lot of people in the States are cooking hotter than that now, but you see a lot of forums of 225. If you're going to cook that low, you'd probably get away with 321. At 275, I'm doing 2.5 hours, 1.5 hours, and then half an hour glaze. So
and that's 2.5 hours unwrapped.
2.5 hours naked, occasional spritz just to keep the surface of the meat moist, not soaking wet. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of new people do, is they actually drown the rib, and you're basically rinsing the rub off and you're stopping bark formation if you do that. So it's really just a gentle spritz to keep the surface moist. So 2.5 hours naked, an hour and a half wrapped, and then half an hour just with, your glaze on.
But basically, if you get to a point and you're looking at your rib and it's naked and it might be an hour and a half in or 2 hours in, and the color's really nice, and you're putting your finger on it and the rub's not coming away, is there any reason you can't wrap at that point?
Not at all.
Is that what we're looking for?
Not at all. So I actually had someone message me today actually saying that they'd overcooked the ribs and what happened. And I said the visual cues are as important as temperature, right? So you've got to look at it and go, when I cooked with the pit barrel the first time, I did 2.5 hours, and they were probably the most done I've ever seen on any pit. Super even, top to bottom. Really surprised that it didn't burn hanging directly over the coal, but they were more done than I'd ever seen. So I actually adjusted the wrap time and I took that down to an hour, and then I only did 15 minutes, I think it was, on the glaze bit. And they came out perfectly. But yeah, you've got to look at the ribs, you've got to feel them. A good test is actually lifting the rack up from the middle and seeing how it actually bends. Now, when a good rack of ribs is done, it will fold, but it will still hold under its own weight. And you'll start to see cracks at the sort of apex of the bend. You'll start to see the meat sort of crack, but it will still hold up under its own weight. And that's usually a good sort of, feel indicator of doneness with ribs. Now,
here's the controversial part, right? And it depends whether you're talking to comp people or eat at home people. Fall off the bone or stay on the bone?
I actually don't mind either way, to be honest with you, mate. Personally, I do quite a lot of, cooks that I post, and I don't really want to be picking up a rib and leaving the meat behind. So my cooks are usually stay on the bone, clean bite through, and if you can get it to the point where you can bite on one side and bite on the other and have just that bit of bone showing, that's kind of the perfect texture for me.
But I think it's kind of important to note as well, because I know people get really head up about this, but if people like eating it as fall off the bone ribs, cook them fall off the bone and be a hero.
100%.
Be a hero in your backyard, whether it's with family, friends, whatever.
Yeah.
Because most people just love a rib where the bone comes clean out and they're just like, that's amazing. And cook it like that. I quite like them fall off the bone when I'm cooking.
Yeah, I do.
Home.
I actually love them. I haven't posted it yet, but I did a McRib the other day, so I cooked basically a third of a rack, and I cooked it way over so I could pull the bones out, trim out the cartilage, and then it was one slab that I put in a long roll. So absolutely, mate. I mean, fall off the bone is still as good as not falling off the bone, right? I think, visual appeal, staying on the bone is good. For eating, fall off the bone, there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion.
So what about the old glaze or no glaze? Are we talking dry ribs, wet ribs, sauce, no sauce?
All of the above. I think you have to try them all. I cook every single type of rib. So wet, dry, Memphis dust. I mean, there's lots of recipes online for Memphis dust, and that's probably one of the, the better dry ribs that you'll ever have. More recently, I've been experimenting with just salt and pepper ribs and just glazing with maple syrup. There's no real expense in doing that. It's stuff that you will probably have in your pantry. No additional things to buy. And actually, they're probably the family favorite right now. Salt and pepper with maple syrup.
Luke, are you a dry rib, a sauced rib? What goes down in your house?
Dry rib. Definitely dry rib.
Dry rib.
Yeah.
With a dipping sauce or
rib.
without?
No, without. I mean, I there's some good sauces out there, but I find some of them are just too sweet, and I prefer to have that kind of more savoury style of rib. So it's the spices, and it's got a little bit of bite to it, but isn't overpowered by sweetness, which sometimes you can if it's got too much glaze on it.
Yeah, agreed.
But definitely
Cool.
dry rib.
And do we have to rest ribs now? Are we resting them, or it's pretty much straight off, isn't it?
I've tried both. More recently, I've actually been putting them in a foil tray and covering them with glaze, and then covering them with foil for 10 minutes and just leaving them there to sort of soak in the glaze. I quite like that. It does something good just resting them for that 10 minutes, but no need. I think all ribs really, including shorties, you don't really need to rest them. It's straight off the pit and straight into the gob.
And what about good sides for ribs? What are we pairing with them? Because they can be quite, like you said, Luke, the sauces can be really sweet and quite sticky. So if you've got a sauced rib, you've got to think about the sides it's going with. You don't want it with a whole heap of really fatty stuff alongside it, or you'll just get pretty sick pretty quick.
For me, slaw is always, but a slaw with apple mixed through it.
Yeah, nice.
Is you get that apple crunch when you're having your ribs. It's an awesome combo. And potato salad and slaw is pretty much my go-to for anything to do with any type of protein, really.
Just out of curiosity, mate, what apple do you use in that slaw?
Jazz apple.
Okay.
I like jazz apple. Jazz apples have that crispness and sweetness that I like. I'm not a big sweet glaze, but I like that natural sweetness that comes from the apple. So jazz is a they'll
to cut through that fattiness, huh? I mean, anything with a bit of vinegar in it, maybe some pickles and that kind of bit of onion.
Yeah, that acidity.
Yeah. Always pickles on the side for me with ribs, actually.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, hopefully that gives people a bit of more confidence about going out there and getting a pit and getting stuck into some ribs. I think it was one of the first things I cooked. I love ribs, absolutely love them. So, and my kids go mental for ribs, even to the point where if we have ribs and some of their friends aren't there, they'll take pictures of the ribs and send them to their friends so that their friends know that they're having ribs and they're not. So ribs is always a big favorite in my house.
Yeah, definitely. Same here.
Right. Well, I think it's about time to turn that light on Mr. Seeney here. I'm just going to re-top my drink here before we get started because, here's Mr. Jack Daniels.
I'll join you.
Make sure that we honour that. But I think it's time to turn up the heat a bit on Luke and get into some hard-hitting journalistic questions, obviously, that we've been preparing. So
go for it.
I'm sure it's going to be fine for you. I'm sure it's going to be fine. So, I mean, as we said at the start of the show, Luke has been instrumental in the New Zealand barbecue scene. No, you're killing me. You're putting Coke in that single barrel, right? I can hear it.
No.
Switch your internet off.
Almost bad as Melville, seriously.
Sorry.
Almost.
So for those that don't know, Luke, he's been instrumental in the New Zealand scene. He was one of the people that helped set up the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance, which used to be the New Zealand Barbecue Pitmasters Facebook page. He is responsible for running, I think now, pretty much all the official competitions around New Zealand, the barbecue competitions are Jack Daniel's sponsored, and you take a real role in making sure they're run properly and right. And obviously, you are Mr. Jack Daniel's in this country as well, responsible for the marketing and promotion of that product here, which has a history with barbecue, both in New Zealand from people drinking it pretty much, but now with the comp scene, but also in the States, there's the Jack in Tennessee, which is an amazing competition.
It's a huge event.
Yeah, exactly. And I think before we get into barbecue, because I am drinking, I put it up earlier, but I'm drinking the New Zealand Barbecue Pitmasters single barrel Jack Daniels, which, Luke, you went over to Tennessee, over to the distillery, and hand selected this barrel to come back to New Zealand. So tell us a little bit about that, because it's a lovely glass.
Yeah, so I'll just correct you on that one. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go to the US to choose this particular barrel. I've been over there to choose a few barrels before that, but they sent us samples for this one. So they sent us a sample, three different samples of 3 different barrels from the US that we could choose. We gauged some interest on the page to see if anyone wanted to buy a Pitmaster barrel, which they did. So we got these samples down from the US. We sat in a room and we got to try them and choose the flavor profile we thought was best to go with barbecue.
And what
obviously,
what were the cues you were looking for to match with the New Zealand barbecue scene?
I think we were looking for a little bit of sweetness. So with the single barrels, you kind of have a little bit of that wood focus, or you have a bit of a sweet focus, or you have a bit more of a fruit flavor focus. So we wanted something that had a little bit of sweetness to it. Obviously, you get sweetness from the corn that comes through in Tennessee whiskey, but something a little bit of sweetness, but something that would stand up to the fattiness of barbecue, because obviously with the rubs and the sauces and the glazes that you use for barbecue, they're quite strong and powerful. So we wanted something that could cut through that and still, you could really taste it on the palate still. So
how many bottles are in a barrel? Like, how many bottles came over from this?
There's roughly around 240 bottles that come out of a barrel.
Wow.
Out of a full barrel, yeah, that come over. And obviously they come over bottled. We can't bring the wooden barrel over, but we actually bring the empty wooden barrel over with it. But so about 240 700 ml bottles that come out of it.
And you gave the barrel top away as well, didn't you? Is that right?
Yeah, we did give the barrel away. I can't remember who we gave the barrel away to, but the barrel did go away. Someone.
It's a nice touch.
So there's a wooden barrel in someone's man cave somewhere.
And here, plug time. I think you can still buy the odd bottle, can't you? Do Glengarry's still have a few on the?
Yeah, Glengarry's have a few left. Not too many. There are a few floating around. We had a big rush on it initially, and then there was a few bottles left behind, but there's still a few there. We will look to do another barrel at some point in the next 12 months, hopefully, and get another one down.
Mine's getting quite low, so maybe I'll have to snag one of those just to have in reserve. I know there are a few people who bought 2, one to never open and one to drink. There's a couple.
It's good there's a few diehard collectors out there, not just in the barbecue scene, but in the Jack Daniel's community. There's a fair few collectors
and a few crossovers there. So, American style barbecue. How'd you get into barbecue?
Oh, that's a good question. It goes back to my childhood, really. I mean, I remember barbecue from when I was really young, like 3 or 4 years old. I remember barbecue from my dad. I grew up in a small country town in the northwest of Western Australia, in an iron ore and natural gas mining town, a place called Karratha, and it was a small community. It was a small town back then. Everyone knew each other. Everyone knew each other in the street. Everyone knew each in the neighbourhood, and whenever they had a party, everyone came to the party. So, as far back as I can remember, my dad did lambs on the spit, and he had a Weber. Always had a Weber. I remember him always having a Weber barbecue, and he did the Christmas dinner every year on the Weber barbecue. It was lamb or pork or chicken or turkey or whatever he was cooking.
Was he a good cook, or was he the traditional burnt sausages and blackened chicken?
No, he's amazing. He's an amazing cook. He's always been, especially around barbecue and meat in general. He's had pizza ovens and different grills and all that sort of stuff over the years, and he's been an amazing cook when it comes to meat and food. And both my parents are still very passionate about cooking and food these days. And I think that's where I got my passion for food, was around the fact that they used to cook a lot of it. We didn't have a lot of takeaways and stuff like that. It was all home cooked meals. So I've always been around that barbecue side of things, and then it's just sort of grown from there, and it's evolved over the years, and it's just one of those sort of passions that's sort of stuck with me. And the American side of things came more in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, that American low and slow type of thing. Before that, it was definitely more that hot and fast grilling rather than low and slow.
So what pit did you buy for yourself first up?
First barbecue I had was a Weber kettle. That was the first proper barbecue I've had. Since then, I still have, and I've had multiple different things. I've had the fortune of being involved with some guys who are really good fabricators, and we've built some barrel pits out of Jack Daniel's barrels, and we've built some, Santa Maria style grills. We've got my latest grill, which is absolutely amazing, is a steak cooker box, which is just this 300 kilo piece of metal box that just has a V grill on it that cooks steaks. Weber was my first one, easiest one to sort of get set up with, and then it's kind of evolved massively over the years.
How many pits are sitting in the Seeney household at the moment?
Not as many as you would think in the actual house at the moment. I've got a few in storage. At the moment, I'm fortunate. I've got one of the big Jack Daniel's pits parked up on the street.
Yeah.
I've got a Weber GA. I've got a Weber kettle. I've got a Octo Pit XL, and I've got my steak cooker. That's what's at home at the moment.
Yeah. It's an addictive thing, isn't it? Apparently I'm on a 1 in, 1 out policy for barbecues, because I'm not allowed to buy one unless I get rid of one. And I keep saying, well, I've still got the gas one out there, which will be the one that goes first, which we haven't used in 2 years. Do you find the same pressure in your household? Or do you just get an eye roll every time one turns up and it's like,
yeah, to a certain point, but I'm like a library of barbecues at the moment. I've got a few loaned out that'll hopefully come back at some stage. But those ones were the ones that went out. But they will come back at some point.
Luke, I've got to interject here, because I heard a very funny story from our mate Mikey Led. So I'm gonna actually drink to that man. He's a good man. But he was telling me a bit of a story about how you acquired your hibachi grills for each other. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, so you if someone gifts you something, it's not you personally buying it, but so we decided that we would buy each other a hibachi grill for our birthdays. So I bought him one, he bought me one. They both came to the house, and our wives couldn't argue the point that we had these barbecues. So
it's a very neat trick.
And that, my friends, is how you get yourself a barbecue without the wife being able to complain. Brilliant.
I think there's a service that we could set up there, isn't it? It's almost like barbecue matchmaking between people who can buy each other barbecues.
Yeah.
And you can have like an arrangement, like a bit like an arranged marriage or a green card, marriage. You just go, I'll buy you this if you buy me that, and we'll sort the money out later.
if you're going to have someone like that, you can't go past someone like Mikey Led. He's a true GC when it comes to helping a brother out. Yeah.
And Mikey, I mean, for those that don't know who Mikey is, he's your offside, your right hand man in the barbecue scene, isn't he? I mean, let's talk about Mikey a little bit. Who came first, you or Mikey in barbecue?
I came into the scene probably before Mikey did, and but Mikey and we've been best mates for 20 years. Mikey was the best man at my wedding, so he's my brother from another mother, and we've known each other for years and years, and we tend to kind of go in the same circles. So I got into it. He was looking, he was looking for a hobby and a bit of a passion as well. So he got into it and was into it just as much as I was, and helping me out on those sides of things. He's my teammate in Smoking Beards, and we're the best team that's never competed. Although we are competing at Napier, that's
exciting.
That's a big bit of news.
Yeah, so we're competing in the SCA. We won't do the low and slow because we'll be judging that, but we'll be doing the SCA on the Saturday, the first time the team actually competes, which will be exciting.
Awesome.
That's brilliant. That is fantastic.
But no, we've just been good mates for years, and he's a good bugger.
He's a great character, and he's always around all the comps and doing good things all the time. So I think you are known within the competition scene and within the barbecue scene just inherently. So how did you get involved with the Pitmasters page, and how then did you kind of almost take it on and grow it into what is now the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance?
So it all comes back. It was about 4 years ago when meat stock was first coming to the scene in New Zealand. I just joined the page. One of the guys at work got me into the page, and it was about 15 or 1600 people back then, you know, on the page, and I was watching it, and there was a few key characters back then. Mike from Meat Fingers Barbecue was one of the first guys in there, and he was really driving the page pretty hard with Jay and the team. And so I reached out to him and just said, hey, listen, you know, I look after this whiskey brand, Jack Daniels, in New Zealand for marketing. I'd love to have a chat to you about how we can potentially get involved with you on a team level and sponsor you guys in this meat stock event that's coming up, and then we'll kind of take it from there. And so I drove out to their house, and they put on this big feed, and we sat there and drank and ate. It was an awesome day, and that was kind of the initial part of it. And then meat stock rolled around, and it was awesome. It was about 40 to 50 teams that competed that year, and it was huge for New Zealand. That was the first time most of these teams had competed in this market. And then after that, there was this void. Everyone was kind of having this come down. It was kind of like, well, what happens now? What do we do now? Where do we go from here? And people were trying to organise these backyard barbecue kind of small comps and all these sort of bits and pieces. And so it gave us an opportunity from my work point of view. This is where I kind of get that crossover, was that I judged at Meat Stock, the first Meat Stock, and got an insight into that. And I met Jay and the team behind it, and it was cool. And then we went to Sydney and checked out the Sydney event as well. But there's all this chatter and people asking for something, what's next? And so I caught up with our agency, our advertising agency, and said, hey, listen, there's an opportunity here. What do you guys think? You know, I mean, it's a local scene. It's food, goes with whiskey. You know, New Zealanders are really big about their food and drinking habits. Do you think there's an opportunity for us to tack onto this? So we put this strategy together and this brief together, and I presented it to our exec team at the office and said, hey, listen, I think there's an opportunity for us here to get in on the ground level and grow this community and grow this scene. What do you think? And part of that pitch to them was I had put in there this Radar Hill trailer smoker I'd seen in Australia. I'm like, you know, I really think we should buy this trailer smoker. It's 6 meters long. It's 2 meter cooking chamber. It's got a warmer on the bottom. It'd be amazing. I really think this would be great for events. You know, we could work with bars and restaurants and cook ribs and serve ribs and stuff, and it'd be great. And I'd tack that on there thinking, you know, I'll probably get the rest of it across the line, and that would probably be the bridge too far. And I ended up walking out with permission to buy 2 of these trailer pits, and I was stoked. I was like, this is awesome. This is cool.
And of course, they're collector's items now, aren't they? Because they're not made anymore, so they're pretty sought after pits, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we got the last 2, and we've done some work on them, and we've put roofs on them and other bits and pieces, and they're an ongoing, you know, ongoing kind of. I won't say black hole, but there's always things that you do with them. But they're amazing pits. They cook some amazing meat.
They're great.
But part of that strategy was, listen, there's this community of people that's growing. They want this competition side of thing going. So the first year we got involved, we said, listen, let's just run a series just for the competitors. You know, so we don't want to go to the level of running each competition as open to the public type competition. We don't want to go from zero to that big that quickly. So we decided to do this Jack Daniels National Barbecue Series, which was 8 events over from August through to sort of May, June the following year around the country, and let's launch this series, and that's what we did year 1. So year 1 was about 8 comps, all closed to the public, just the competitors, to really start to drive the scene and grow the scene. And then our goal was by year 3 was to be less about us running all the competitions, and it was about helping promoters run their own events, so that we were still a sponsor of those competitions, but we weren't actually we weren't doing it ourselves. And that's where we are now. So, you know, so Jack Daniels does, we put on the Cumu Hot Rod Festival, the barbecue competition there, and we do an invitational at the Long Room, or a ballot one at the Long Room each year, and then we sponsor the rest. The rest are put on by other promoters that we sponsor.
And
so that's the comp side.
What have you seen? Like, I mean, from when you guys came into it, and obviously put a lot of money into it and a lot of support into it, what have the big changes been in the scene, whether it's competitions or just in what you see from, you know, people into barbecue? What have been the changes?
I mean, the big changes is that it's now seen as a sport. You know, people take it quite seriously, and they get quite competitive, and it costs money. You know, we get that. We made a choice that was, listen, we can't sponsor every team. Like we tried to, like early on in the piece, we picked teams and we could sponsor them and help them out. But then we didn't want to look like we were favouring certain teams across the scene that we're trying to grow the whole of. So it became this, rather than us sponsoring individual teams, we're going to sponsor the series and we're going to sponsor these individual events that happen, and we're going to sponsor the annual leaderboard. And what we've seen now is that teams, obviously, there's a cost to them. They're looking for sponsors and they're getting sponsors. So you see this proliferation of, breweries sponsoring teams, and you see other distilleries sponsoring teams and this sort of thing, which we get and we totally get. But that's probably the biggest thing that we see now is the fact that, for a big brand that puts these sort of things on, you want to keep supporting the scene and keep growing the scene, but you're conscious that, hey, everyone wants to get into it now because it's gone from, 2,000 followers on a Facebook page to 35,000 people on it. It's a big community and a big opportunity for these brands to be seen. So I think that's the biggest thing for us. The amount teams invest in gear is just insane. From the first comp we had at QMU to now is just, the kit some of these guys are rolling around the country is just amazing, from fully kitted out trailers to their pits and stuff like that. It's unreal.
So with if I'm a new team looking to enter the competition barbecue scene now, what do you think I need to be doing in terms of kit? Going about seeking out sponsors. Like how would you approach it if you're a brand new team looking to actually get into competition barbecue?
First, I'd say commit to it and just do it. Mm-hmm. I've had heaps of conversations with new teams at comps over the years that they're stoked to be there. They get into the vibe. They tend to partake a little bit too much on night one, and they learn at their first comp.
Never.
So I've seen many teams demise on their first night, normally by a more experienced team who set them up. But I think it's committing to it. Just do it. You don't have to have the biggest kit. You don't have to have all the gear. You don't have to have the best cuts of meat. Often what we find for new teams is they actually do pretty well in their first couple of comps because they cook how they know how to cook. They don't try and do anything differently. They don't try and be too creative. They don't try and start bringing in these different injections and rubs and all that kind of stuff. They cook from the heart. They cook what they know, and sometimes that flavor profile resonates better with the judging than someone who's been cooking for 2 years and keeps changing their flavor profile every comp to try and get the right flavor profile.
You start to outthink yourself, don't you? I mean, we've done it. I mean, we've been around now for just over a year in the comp scene, and the biggest learning that I had over a whole year wasn't about what pit you had or what, did you have a Wagyu bit of brisket or a, Iberico pork. It was actually, you did much better when you cooked it really well versus anything else you could do. The texture score drives your taste score, and if you cook it well, it's going to look pretty nice. So your presentation score, and that was the biggest learning. You could actually do a very simple flavor profile and still do well because it was a really well cooked bit of meat.
Well, totally. And when judges are judging, the first thing they use to their first sense they get is appearance. They use their eyes as their first thing. Now, it's like when you're aesthetics is a big thing about what then your perception is of that protein after that point. So if you see something and it looks appealing, then you're more inclined to think, well, the texture is going to be good and the flavor is going to be good. So for new teams, it's about that balance across those three things. Don't just try and get the flavor profile right and forget about the other two, or don't just try and get the appearance right and forget about the other two. You want to kind of just try and make sure that you're balancing your protein out.
Yeah, and let's chat a bit about judging, because you're now basically a lot of your work around the comps, focuses on the judging, and you and Mikey and Kyle are taking a real lead in that kind of area, and that can often be somebody's first experience of competition barbecue as being a judge, and anyone can be a judge, right? It's pretty easy to be a judge as long as you can.
Yeah, I mean, you need different palettes. Like you want varied palettes across the judging team, because you want people's different perspectives. You don't necessarily want trained chefs, because trained chefs have a very particular style of what they like and what they don't like. What you want is someone who just enjoys food, because what people don't realize is that when we're judging, it's not just 4 people in a room judging 30 teams barbecue. It's 36 judges judging everyone's barbecue. So you need a varying palettes and people's opinions to be able to get a really good balanced score across the judging process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key, isn't it? And Noel, you do a fair amount of judging, don't you? So, what sort of things are you looking for and seeing in the judging tent?
I think the first thing that I look to do is try and turn up on time because Luke's forever having a go at me about being late to the tent. So that's the first thing I need to get right. No, the second, I mean, look, the judging course is actually quite, quite comprehensive from top to bottom, right? So they give you a lot of guidance around what you should be looking for. There's a couple of things. I mean, if I just, rather than go through them all, if we take brisket, for example, I do the same thing every time, right? So I fold the slice, look for that bend test. I then pick it up from one end, pull it from end to end just to make sure it holds under its own weight, but it breaks. And then obviously I eat that and I look for a good sort of mouth texture and taste and good balanced flavor, and for me, I favor brisket that you can actually taste the meat. Some people like really well sourced brisket slices. I'm more of a, actually let the meat shine, season it well and actually let the meat flavor come through. So I think that sort of speaks to what Luke was saying about needing different palates, across the whole judging spectrum,
I'm forever giving Noel shit when he's judging.
Why as you should? I think you should carry on with that.
Well, he's a passionate foodie, and I get that. But he sits there with this look on his face like he's about to write a book about what he's just put in his mouth and what he's just tasted. And then he goes and offers the judging table a second round.
I did that the last time. Yeah. I was like,
I'm forever just looking at him going, "Come on, mate, this is like it's a quick process. We move through it. You're not writing a memoir about this piece of brisket you've just tasted."
Yeah.
So it's
if somebody's listening out there right now and saying, "Oh, I could be a judge. I could be a judge," how do they go about being a judge, Luke?
Well, so the way the judging works is the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance is the sanctioning body for competitions. We bring in the judging crew and we run the judges on the day. But most of the promoters will put out on the Pitmaster page or the New Zealand Barbecue Alliance page when an event's coming up. So they'll promote an event, say, okay, Smoke on the Coast is this dates. We're looking for teams. Once the teams sign up, they put out another post that says, hey, now we're looking for judges. Okay, email this address. So you just got to keep an eye out for when those competitions are coming up. And if you see who's promoting it, reach out to them and say, hey, listen, I'm really keen to give judging a go. Can I put my name down or at least register some interest for it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. I think the one thing you have got to be prepared for is the sweats, isn't it? Because you have to eat a fair amount, and there's lots of tips and tricks which catch people out. Don't go hard once you get the chicken because it will taste good.
Yeah, that's the key thing. You got to pace yourself. You drink a lot of water because there is a lot of salt content in this meat, so you don't want to dehydrate yourself over the. Otherwise, your family hate you for the next few days afterwards. But it's about balancing it out. That you're there to try. If you want to eat it, you can eat it. But we've had many people who come in with this beating their chest that they can eat as much. They can eat a lot, and by the last round, they want to sit out because they're just stuffed. They can't do it anymore.
Now, I want to talk just real quickly before we get on to the Firedragon challenge. I want to talk about your knives, which sounds kind of serial killer-ish because you love knives. Tell us about your knife collection, Luke. It's impressive.
Listen, I have more knives than I need. I openly admit that. If there was a group I could go and be a part of to talk about that, I would. But knives are awesome. I mean, they're cool. You need a good piece of kit. Maybe not as many knives as I've got, but I just love, they're almost like art pieces, half these knives, because if you look at the fabricators we have in New Zealand, they do amazing jobs with some of these products. You've got Dan Franklin down the line who, his dad's a forger as well, but they make these high carbon steel blades out of car springs, and then they use this native wood and brass handles, which are amazing. And then you've got Svord, who are making these amazing bone handled filleting knives and chef knives and cleavers. And then you've got CW Works, down in the South Island, he's refurbing all these cool American cleavers and knives with skateboard deck handles, which look cool.
Yeah,
and
they're incredible.
Goulda. Oh, they're wicked. And then you've got Goulda Knives, who are doing these amazing kind of awesome looking blades. And I've started working with a guy called Caleb Smith, who does Feihu Forgery, and they forge, and he does these amazing Damascus steel folded knives. And you've got Cutthroat in Australia, and you've got I mean, I could go on, but so for me, they're wicked art pieces almost. And I try and support locally produced. I know that I haven't mentioned a heap, and I learned a lot this week. There was a post on the page about someone asking about New Zealand knife makers, and there was a heap more that I hadn't even heard of before. So my wife's going to hate me even more as I start looking at other.
Just a quick question on those knives, Luke. I mean, there'll be a lot of people, that saw that thread the other day that actually start to get interested in maybe buying their first custom knife. And as you know, you can spend $1,500 on a single knife, right? So, what would you recommend that they look for? If you're looking to sort of enter into that world, what would you say that they need to be looking for?
Depending on how deep they want to go, as far as how many they want to get or what they want to do. Someone else asked a question about if you had one knife, what would it be? And I think out of all the knives I've got, the one I use the most is a really good filleting knife and a decent length. Like I'd look for like a 8-inch or 10-inch filleting knife, and I've got a really nice sword filleting knife that I use a lot. And then from there, I'd look at something like a multi-purpose. I wouldn't go straight to a brisket knife because brisket knife isn't a multi-purpose kind of knife. You'd go to something like a chef knife, like a 10-inch chef knife or an 8-inch chef knife. Or, I love using like a santoku, like a Japanese style santoku knife, which is really good because that works really well for not just slicing meat, but for dicing vegetables and that kind of stuff. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's my least favorite part of Barbecue Base coming up. And I know we've prepped you for this because I know Noel dropped around safe contactless delivery of some of the Firedragon chili Dragon's Fury. Yeah, which we've got.
I sniffed it and almost shat myself. So.
Which was kindly provided to us by Clint from Firedragon and Ken at Barbecue Boy or BOI, Barbecue BOI, who launched a new website today. So make sure you get along there. Check out his website. You can order online from him really easy now, and great delivery from Ken. So we're just gonna
stop on that one for a sec. Ken's relatively new to the scene compared to a lot of other people within the scene, but the impact he's made on the scene since he's joined has been amazing. He's such a positive energy that walks around the pit yard at events, gets involved. He's a shout out to him. He's a GC.
And as we mentioned last time. Owner of the best beard in New Zealand officially, because he won the beard category at Meatstock. So an official best beard in New Zealand as well.
He has. So look, can I just add to that? The guy's a trained chef. So he's been a chef for 20 years. So I guess obviously if you're going to Barbecue Boy and you're looking to buy barbecue products, you can also talk to him about how to cook your food, what works, what doesn't work, what flavor profiles and stuff. So, he's just all round can help you with getting barbecue better,
Right. So I've got mine on a little cracker here. Oh, you've got quite a lot on a cracker.
I've got a lot on a cracker here.
I'm not going that hard.
That's all right, mate.
Luke's got his cracker. So we've got 10 questions.
Can we see that cracker, Luke? Can we just have a quick look at that cracker?
It's on there. It's on there. Don't even try.
Okay. So, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Ow. Straight away. I don't have any water. I've only got whiskey to deal with. So, okay.
All right.
Fuck
Luke, what's your favorite type of barbecue to cook on and why? Ow.
Santa Maria. I like hot and fast. I'm more of a hot and fast than a low and slow, to be completely honest with you. Oh, God.
So hot.
Hot and fast, and it's multi-purpose, so you can do low and slow if you really want to, but Santa Maria style barbecue.
What's your favourite cut of meat to eat and why?
Tomahawk steak.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact you can. Reverse sear it and it's still moist and tender and has amazing flavour. I love that caramelization you get on the bone. So that tomahawk steak is probably my favourite.
Brilliant.
It wasn't this hot last time, Noel. I swear it's got hotter. Anyway, what's your biggest fail to date apart from taking this challenge?
Biggest fail today. I hate brisket. I'm the first to admit it. I can't cook brisket. I fucking hate it. Excuse my language, but just It turns out I end up, I dry out the bottom, I burn the bottom. I just, can't fucking deal with brisket at all.
Well, that segues nicely into the next question: fat side up or fat side down? I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it?
I'll burn either.
Brilliant.
Okay. Strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, shit. Something in Vietnam. I can't remember what it is off my head. I can't concentrate that much. What was it? Some kind of brain in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Would be my, would be my pick on that.
What's the best barbecue that you've eaten that's not yours?
Oh, good question. God, I don't know off the top of my head, I can't really give you that answer. I mean, in New Zealand or overseas?
Wherever you want, mate.
Not barbecue. Oh, yeah. I can't answer that one, to be honest. There's I've had too much good barbecue. Too many good barbecue. Right.
Who did you learn most from starting out or getting into cooking or barbecue?
My parents. I wouldn't be able to split either or, but in cooking in general, would be my parents in the kitchen and cooking on barbecue.
Cool. So low and slow or hot and fast?
Hot and fast. Yeah. I know that's going to annoy a few people on a low and slow kind of style page, but hot and fast is my go-to. Just in the time of life I'm in.
It's lifestyle driven, mate. But as long as you're cooking it over charcoal, it's a good thing, right? It's all good.
Oh, totally. But I mean, I love cooking barbecue. I love cooking. Love eating low and slow, but cooking hot and fast.
Cool.
Who's the?
I hate you.
Who's the biggest legend in New Zealand barbecue?
Now this is one where I don't think I can pinpoint one particular person. I think there's a few. I mean, if you look back at the OGs, you look at. I mean, Jared's done heaps for barbecue. You look at Mike from Big Smoke; he's done heaps from the get go. Noel's a massive contributor. I mean, he must have fat thumbs in that.
You're not allowed to mention Noel in this. He's already got a big enough head. He's not allowed to get any larger.
I know.
I'm not.
But I mean, listen, Caleb Tyala was a absolute
Huge.
DC. Yeah. I personally just absolutely gutted he's not around anymore. He was a big foundation for the positivity within the community.
Caleb was always just so happy to help anybody sit down, have a chat. It didn't matter whether he was competing, judging, just hanging around. He would always just put himself in both feet first. He was a fantastic guy.
I think there's the one. I think there's the ones in the forefront as well, and then there's the ones that are in the background too, right? The ones that would actually come with their lorry and pick up 3 different people's gear and take it to the comp, and you don't really see that visually, but it happened, No. So there's just so many legends all across this scene. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean that's the biggest thing. I mean, from going quickly, just nipping back to the page, is that that people. I appreciate the intro I got at the start of this about being Godfather barbecue and all that sort of stuff, but I don't really wear that because it's the community as a whole is what makes it what it is. I just happen to be in a position where I can help that grow, but it's the community that's grown it, and the positivity that's grown the community. It's not one person or not one particular person.
100% agree. Yeah.
Okay, bring us home, Noel.
Top tip for a newbie barbecuer. Your top tip.
Don't go all in. Don't spend all your money on your first barbecue and blow all your cash. Learn what you want, learn what you need, and then find what you actually want, and then spend your money on something that you're going to keep for years rather than just kind of buy something that you're going to try and sell in 6 months' time.
Very good tip.
That's a great tip. And that brings us, thankfully, because the milk in my fridge is calling to me. That is some hot shit. If you want it,
I'm not. No offense to those. I'm not trying that ever again.
Firedragon chilies. There's a whole range of stuff. This is their Dragon's Fury, which has got a bit of fury tonight. I'll tell you that. But support these guys. Support Barbecue BOI Bay of Islands. Support the guys that support.
Absolutely.
I can hardly even speak to finish. But
Luke, support local.
thank you so much for coming and being a part of Barbecue Base. We've loved having you on the show. Hope to have you on the show again at some point. But thanks for being such a great guest.
Anytime, boys. I really appreciated the first sort of 50 minutes of it.
Yeah, and look, just to sort of reiterate as well, if anyone's got any questions or wants any further info, obviously we have a new page, Barbecue Base, and also subscribe to the podcast channels as well if you can.
Absolutely, get those those notifications when we have a new episode out. So thanks a lot, guys. Super great episode, lots of fun, and we will see you all next time on the next episode of Barbecue Base.